interim Celtics head coach, Joe Mazzulla, who put that loss on himself last night. He went after that, Shime, talked about how he was not there, essentially, end of that game, should have done things a little bit differently. Wiggy, you brought that up earlier.
Mm-hmm.
You felt like he should have.
Yeah, there weren't two good teams. There was one good team and one team that sucks. Let's be honest. And yeah, I think that when you look at Mazzulla in certain situations, people can criticize. Well, I think Miami went on like a 10-0 run. Did he wait a little bit too long? And then the Celtics, they couldn't throw the ball in the ocean. They
didn't score for 6 minutes.
Right. So, maybe there's timeouts here at the end, drawing up plays.
Well, they had that same issue night before in the fourth quarter where they could not put the ball in.
Mm-hmm.
I like the fact that Joe Mazzulla is putting that on himself.
I do too, and I think players respect that when a coach goes in front of the media and says something like that. I've seen some people say like, oh, well, if we had Ime. I think we need to stop that because this Celtics team has been incredible this season. So to say if we had Ime, it's like this guy stepped into a really difficult situation. He was thrown into a situation when a team was probably really pissed, whether they were pissed that Ime lost his job or they were pissed that Ime put them in this position after an unbelievable end of the season last year. Ended not how they wanted it to, but they made a great run at it. To then come into this position as Ime Udoka screws everybody, and you're Joe Mazzulla stepping in.
Literally.
Oh, well, yes. But then you're you're Joe Mazzulla stepping into that. He's done a great job, so let's stop trying to compare him to if we did this, if we had him, if we didn't let him go. He's doing a great job. He's taking accountability. That's all you want from a head coach.
Yeah, it means not until the playoffs. Because he has to get to the NBA Finals. Because if not, then we're going to be like, well, imagine if Ime had this team. That's what we're going to do.
We shouldn't, though.
But that's the way it works, right? If you talked about Bruce Cassidy, that's been your biggest thing. If let's say they brought in Montgomery, and let's say the Bruins don't make the playoffs or they got bounced in the first round, there'll be people out there that'll say, and let's say Cassidy's Vegas Knights go far, and there'll be people out there that go, well, they should have kept Cassidy.
If they kept Cassidy, though, we would have lost a bunch of our players.
Right,
we wouldn't have had Patrice back. We wouldn't have had Krejci. DeBrusque would be out the door.
But don't you know how we judge coaches, right? You're judged on what they do. So if the Celtics don't get to the finals, can you say that it was a better season this year than last year?
No, you can't.
Right, and so then the only change is the coach. But
I'm not putting that, if they don't get to the finals, I'm not putting that on Joe Mazzulla.
Well, it depends on what happens.
The players, Shine brought it up earlier, they had 17 turnovers again last night.
What do you call an offense that doesn't, what do you call a team that doesn't turn the ball over? Well coached?
Right.
So when they do,
right.
The situation here, Wiggy is 1,000% right. Mazzulla will not be the coach next year unless they win the championship. And even then, I would say there's still like a 10% chance he's not here. This is a Ferrari. Brad Stevens and Whit Grousbeck, I assume, look at this team as a wagon that should be winning these games. And if they lose consecutive games to two teams they are better than, vastly better than the Magic, should be better than the Heat, then you start questioning where you're going. Mazzulla's not the coach long term.
Right.
Like, get that out of your head.
Right.
Well, if you're losing those two games essentially without Marcus Smart, do you have like a depth issue on this team?
Well, the problem is you don't necessarily have a depth issue because I thought Derek White stepped in and did a good job, right? So Derek White is the guy last year, Courtney. I know you were on this at some point in time throughout the playoffs. Is when Marcus Smart wasn't playing well, Derek White was the guy. So your depth for Smart is Derek White. He played. You got to look at it.
But if you go last three games, you got a game that you're not going to get very often from my guy P. Pritchard in Toronto on Saturday.
A lot of people are wondering if he should be getting more minutes. Peyton Pritchard.
If he should?
Yeah.
And who's sitting?
That's the question.
You're gonna sit Brogdon,
but you're not going to be able to rely on him for that kind of a game very often.
Right? Who? Peyton Pritchard will have one great game, and people are like, but he is who he is. We've seen him before. The biggest problem, and this goes back to the coach, and Curtis kind of makes this point, right? is if you are turning the ball over and you're having these issues and you're the coach saying, well, I put this on me, then you're not getting the best out of your players, especially in games like this you should win. The biggest issue that they're having, and this is really about the coaching, is you went from being one of the best teams defensively in basketball last season to now you're just kind of like middle of the pack.
Do you say to Peyton Pritchard in the elevator at Echelon, God, those haters suck. It's the worst.
I don't say anything because I'm terrified that he's gonna I'm gonna say something wrong about him on the radio and he's gonna confront me. And
knock him dead tonight, PP.
No, I mean he is who he is. I wouldn't be shocked if they didn't trade him before the deadline.
Greg's definitely the type that goes into the elevator and sees him, and he's like, "Oh, hey, yeah, tell. I was with Wick the other night.
No, don't say a word.
Yeah, he's like, if you see Wick around, tell him Greg says hello.
Tell him Greg says what's up.
Send Pags my best pal."
But Curtis is right, though. How can you feel good about Mazzulla as a fan or a player when the organization is not committal to him?
That's the biggest issue.
No, but the organization is not committed to him because of I guarantee you it is because they're still negotiating with Ime.
Stop. They're
They
still
are
negotiating with him.
What?
And we already know that Ime took less of his salary. Mm-hmm. So what else are they negotiating?
They're negotiating the departure. Like they're negotiating legally how they get out of the Ime situation, and they cannot put the head coach tag on Joe Mazzulla until that's done, or Ime's going to come back and say, "Hey, you made a guy a head coach before I was officially done and fired."
Wait a second. They were getting ready to trade him at one point in the season.
Reportedly.
I don't know that was true or not.
Oh, okay. So now we don't believe that. Now all of a sudden we don't believe it when
convenient.
When it was a Woj bomb.
But why didn't it happen then?
Because
Kyrie ruined it with the anti-Semitic stuff, and it was too toxic to do that deal as well.
Brooklyn got scared after Kyrie put his foot in his mouth and said some things that people didn't like. They're like, well, wait a second. We can't have Kyrie and Ime with all this stuff
all
going.
We've heard is that Ime gets all the guys in line. So I think bring
wait
him
a second. So now you don't believe, you're with Greg, you don't believe the Ime to Brooklyn stuff was real?
I just think it was very interesting how it was talked about everywhere. We were talking about it day after day, and then all of a sudden it just whoop.
So you don't believe it? So that Ime to Brooklyn was not real?
I think they probably had a conversation and then they figured out, no. I don't think it was like a done deal like everybody was saying.
So then do you feel like, Greg, the reason why they're not putting...
Yeah, I don't know how it works behind the scenes. I don't know the business side of running a NBA team, but I'm sure when you have a head coach and then there's a legal issue and you make somebody an interim head coach, you need to figure it out before you remove the tag. I'm sure there's money involved. I'm sure they're worried about getting sued by Ime. I bet there's a lot that goes on behind that we don't understand.
November 1st, Adrian Wojnarowski, ESPN.com. The Brooklyn Nets are finalizing a deal to hire Boston Celtics coach Ime Udoka. You don't get to that stage if he still views himself as an employee of the Boston Celtics.
What is your guess on what they're not sold on Mazzulla is your guess?
No, they're not. And there's no way I can envision Wick Grossbeck allowing a season to go sideways because of fear of losing $1 million at some legal hearing regarding terms of his head coach.
I don't think it's going sideways. They have the best record in the NBA.
No, but if you're saying that they would have a better shot of winning if they remove the interim tag, I guarantee you Wick would do it.
Yeah, I think you have to look at these last two games, losses against inferior teams, and ask a question when it comes to, the injuries. You were.
That's part of it. I'm not going to say it's not part of it.
I think that's.
But it's players' psyche. Do you think those players on that team and look at Mazzulla and go, okay, he's our guy. This is the guy that's going to be here with us.
So then what? They're mailing it in last night?
No, not they're mailing it in, Greg. See, you instantly go to mailing it in. No. But
I expect Jason Tatum, who you tell me over and over again should be the MVP of this basketball team or of this season.
Yeah.
That I expect that's a guy in a game like that last night is going to put the team on his back and win the basketball game for you.
He had a great game last night. See, listen. Wick is a great guy, right? Wick is a great guy. He's done a great job with this organization. But it seems like every time we start to go asking the question of what would make this team better with the Mazzulla thing, it's always like, take the interim. Well, they can't really take the interim tag off of him.
Am I carrying Wick Grossbeck?
It sounds like you are.
Psyche-wise,
he doesn't even call me back anymore.
Psyche-wise, though, Greg,
I can't get a text message back from Sully over there to save my life.
you're the Jason Tatum of this station, correct?
Huh?
If you're the Jason Tatum of this station, correct?
Okay.
If you had a
great
boss,
hands, is that what you're saying? I have great hands.
yeah, MVP. If you have a boss who's an interim boss, and you're like, well, I don't know, maybe he'll be our boss next year, maybe he won't, maybe we're going to get a new person in. You're not building that relationship with him like you would be if you have a real head coach boss.
Small hands.
And here's the thing, Greg, and this is why you are pandering to Wick a bit. You're basically saying he's in a no-win situation. He can't give him the tag, even if he can't remove the interim tag, even if it may help the team, and he can't be blamed if they don't have a good year because legally he's bound by these regulations that he can't change.
Yeah.
And I just don't foresee a situation. The guy that sat in that studio and told you and the audience that the tax is irrelevant to him, they just want to win, and I believe him.
Yeah, I do believe him.
And I believe more. He's like, I'm willing to go out there and get a third max guy. Got no issue with that. Now all of a sudden he's like, well, you know what? It's a couple $1,000,000. We got to make sure before we do anything with Mazzulla, we got to make sure we dotted all our I's and crossed our T's.
Well, you just don't know what's going on necessarily behind the scenes.
I think there is nothing going on. I think we're so caught up in this what's going. I think this thing is an overdone with, nothing burger, nothing to see here. Ime's not suing them. The girl's not suing anybody. Nobody's suing nobody because there's not been any whispers about anything that's going on. Ime was looking for another head coaching job. Woj basically said there was a deal done. So I think everybody has kind of washed their hands and said, you know what, we're good.
Excellent term in the Twitch chat. It pains me to credit Juddy, my archenemy. However, he says I am a Wicco fan.
Yep.
That's pretty good. Pretty good.
And I give you one reason why I believe they haven't taken the interim off Mazzulla. Because like a lot of those players, I believe there is a small chance that Ime's back next year. And I think that's what think that's what front office is thinking, like, all right, how can we smooth this thing out?
Maybe.